Good morning, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. Today, we're going to talk about Dali, but before Dali 2, but before we go, I'm Mataliajo, and to the left of me is my tag team partner,
Liam Markey.
and we also have
Doug Payne. Good morning, or good afternoon and morning to everybody. Happy Valentine's Day.
all right. So before we talk about Dali, I just want to talk real quick about our previous Q schools that we've done. But before I get there, I forgot one important factor here. Definitely go on our webinars because they're very popular, Liam. If you think about it, every time someone calls in, we kind of direct them to our YouTube channel, and there's a couple of good ones out there like the DMX, the color, and the voltage drop. I think you were in one of those too, but I was in all three of those. So if you hit the like button, we'll get some bonus points. All right, Liam, what is Dali?
So Dali stands for Digitally Addressable Lighting Interface, and it's an open protocol lighting control system that was originally designed for commercial spaces, but has slowly moved towards residential. Some of the main benefits or best benefits that would have come out of it would have been when Dali restructured from Dali 1 to Dali 2 recently.
Oh, cool.
It allowed for a two-way communication between the components of each lighting system. So the
Cool.
Dali devices actually allow you to control fixtures, configure scenes, and query fixtures to the
Oh,
point where you could say, is this fixture on or is it burnt out? Is it displaying the light level I'm telling it to?
yep. Cool. You make it sound very exciting. Now, Doug is going to talk to us about why Dali 2.
Absolutely. And Liam, like you talked about, Dali 1 was really primarily like a ballast language, and now it's a ballast and control language. And it is gaining popularity here in the United States. And some people may have heard that Dali drivers are in short supply, but not at Qtrend with these new Dali 2 DT6 and DT8 power supplies. But why is it gaining popularity? Well, people want to record their energy use, and in some cases are required to with energy codes, for example, in Washington State. And these are easier to address fixtures now with Dali. Some of it can be done remotely, and Liam is going to walk us through how it can be done manually as well. And Dali 2 has more channels and dimming options compared to Dali 1. And like you said, Liam, it is bidirectional, but it's also backwards compatible. So if you have a Dali 1 system, you could use one of the Dali 2 power supplies and control it. One of the big benefits if you're doing a two-wire application such as static white or static colors is that you can have a fully rated 96 watts. Before we were limited on a two-wire application to right around 66 watts. And like you said, it's an open protocol. It can easily be integrated into Dali systems, as well as other components can be integrated into Dali systems. And we are working, and it is compatible with the Lutron Athena control system. Matali, I believe that we are working on the Athena nodes to
Correct.
incorporate up to 3 in one enclosure.
Correct.
And I also want to point out the enclosure we're looking at right now is the QTM indoor enclosure, but we also make this an outdoor. But Matali, I believe we have a great benefit with the indoor enclosure as well, where the indoor enclosure can be recessed into IC ratings.
Correct, Doug. Correct. That's all perfect information. Thank you, Doug. So now we're going to talk about we got these two great power supplies, the DT6 and the DT8, and kind of like what applications do we have this, Liam? So for example, we have all this great product on our website. And if you go to each one of these spec sheets, you could actually see the compatibility. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about in detail what each one is. Our DT6 applications, basically, we have a couple of them here, which are the 2-wire and the 3-wire. The 2-wire are static white and a static color. We also again have our warm dim, which is our 2-wire. We also could use our dynamic white as a warm dim strip application too. And the dynamic one has whites have 2 different color temperatures on it. And again, the functionality there is one address. Where the tunable white one, where you have the 2 different color temperatures on the same strip, you could do the individually control the color temperature and the intensity. And the good thing about this DT6 is that it's 0.2% dimming. Cool. DT8 applications, Liam, this is one of the very popular ones for us. So here you have a 3-wire one, which again, you could kind of like control the color temperature intensity. And also you could change the color going from up to down, from like, let's say going from 2700 to 3000, or whatever it is on the dynamic white strip that you specify. You also have color changing, which is a 4-wire, which is RGB plus the power, and then 5-wire, which is RGBW and RGBWE. Again, the biggest difference there is the 4 and the 5-wire. And you could also dim it down to 0.5%. Cool.
And
So,
Metalli, one of the biggest benefits of the DT8 versus the DT6 is, of course, that it only requires that single address versus multiple addresses for tunable white.
correct. Correct.
And so this next chart spells out how many devices that you can use. Now, in the Dali world, everything is based off of 64 devices. As we relate it to QTran fixtures, think of it as the individual driver inside the enclosure. So the QTM, ELED, Dali, DT6, and DT8 drivers that Metalli and Liam have with them right now have 3 drivers, or technically 3 devices that can be powered. So with Dali 1, you used a single address for every channel. So if we were doing a tunable application, we would no longer have the ability to do 64 devices like you can in a 2-wire application. We were using 2 addresses. And then RGB, RGBW, we're using 3 or 4. So it really limited the number of addresses. And this is why DT8 especially is so popular.
Yep.
Because with DT8, we're only using that single address. Now with DT6, if we do tunable white, we still do need 2 addresses for that tunable white. You're having the capability of that system.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Doug. There's
So
a lot of numbers there.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah,
A
a
lot
lot
of
of numbers
numbers
there, and a lot, we can see it on the screen there. So, all right, Liam. One of the most important things that we do in our roles is we kind of do the bill of materials. We take the drawings, and we say, all right, well, how do we put this all together?
Yeah, I'm sure everyone's wondering how they would specify this. So we have 2 example part number builders for our DT6 and our DT8. We're going to look at that DT8 one. One of the nice features about the DT8 or the DT6 is that you can actually have various light engines all powered by the same driver. So you may not need 3 different drivers for 3 different light engines. So if you were to pick the 3-wire for the first wiring output, 4-wire for the second, and 5-wire for the third, you would actually be able to control dynamic white, RGB, and RGBW all with the same driver.
Oh wow, that's definitely better than what we could currently do with our
Oh,
ELED
yeah.
DMX. So, all right, cool. So
And all the
now,
same dimming too.
yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about basically the DT6 configurations, what's inside the power supply center boxes. So for example, for the DT6, like I mentioned in the previous application, you have a 2-wire or a 3-wire. The 2-wire, Liam and Doug, that's basically our static white. And our 3-wire is basically our dynamic white strip. And if you can see there, you can see how each one is connected to the power supply center. Where you have on the static white, you have the plus and minus, and on the 3-wire, you have the 24 volts and the warm and cool. Now let's talk about the power supply center for the DT8. So this is typically what someone on the outside would get if they ordered our 3-wire, 4-wire, or 5-wire. Again, goes to your example on the DT8 when you had the power, when you made the configuration where you actually had a dynamic white, an RGB, and an RGB white all in the same enclosure. If you notice here, our terminal blocks, they're pretty much they're marked out where the wires will go, so they have the good landing section, so no one could get that confused. One other thing we do want to hammer home here is that the Dali controller is by others. That's basically done by another control system on the outside world. And we also, the Dali bus power supply by others. That's very critical because we do not supply that currently. We are looking at becoming D4I compliant for later applications. And we are actually looking at that, implementing it down in the future. One final thing I want to say about this is that the DT8 and the DT6 are the same size, Liam. The only thing that changes inside there is the decoder itself. So it's basically interchangeable. All right.
And Metalli, I just wanted to add the terminal blocks that QTran provides in these systems. You can run multiple home runs as long as you don't exceed 96 watts to our terminal blocks, which would be really difficult to do with the very small terminal blocks on a Dali driver itself.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, these units come fully listed from QTran.
Correct. Yeah.
In their enclosures.
Yep. So this is basically an exploded view of what a 300-watt power supply would look like. and a dynamic. We're using a dynamic white as an example here. If you notice, they're all individually to one separate decoder, and as long as you follow the 96-watt rule, you could load these power supplies up to about 100 watts, so which is or the 96-watt, which is the class 2 requirement. So each one could be loaded up to full potential compared to what our current QTM drive. You gotta derate those. All right, Liam, we have these two power supplies here. We get calls all the time. How do you configure these, to make it work if you have an RGB or if you have a static white? Why don't you talk to us about it?
Yeah, so if people know what configurations they need ahead of time, they can always tell us and we can get those configured here at the factory. But they're fairly easy to configure in the field. Basically, there's just two small little buttons on that Dali decoder in there. And essentially, you can press and hold one of the buttons for 5 seconds and then use the two buttons to navigate to the address that you want. And then the second thing you're going to have to do is just set the output type, which would be your light engine. And that would depend on the amount of wires. So you'll just press and hold both of those buttons for 5 seconds, and then you'll be able to navigate through the light engines.
So you pretty much explained it really, really well there. Again, one of the things we want to let everybody know is that we could do the programming here as long as we have the information of what's needed. So, for example, if you have something that needs to be all RGB, we could do the pre-programming here. So, when you get it on site, you just basically plugging and playing.
One other thing, too, is with that two-way communication of the Dali system, it does make addressing drivers or fixtures in the field a lot easier because you're able to communicate with those devices.
Yep.
Right. And the picture on the question slide has the outdoor version, the QOM. And then, of course, in front of the two of you right now is the indoor version, the QTM.
Yep. All right, guys. I think we kind of did a great job kind of explaining what our DT6 and DT8 power supplies are. I guess we'll just wait to see if we have any questions. And if there isn't any questions, you could always reach out to regionals or inside sales team for questions, or you can send me an email directly, and we'll try to answer the questions as we go along.
So Mark is asking, can you set logarithmic or linear on the dimming curve?
I believe you could go inside the settings and set but we'll have to verify that because I know you could do it on the previous ones. On this one, I have to double check.
David wants to know, are the QTM enclosures IC rated?
So we're gonna have to get back to that, but I believe I believe it is, but we'll have to get back to him on that question.
Gregor wants to know, do we need to be concerned with compatibility between your driver and the light engine?
So typically, all the fixtures that we do supply are compatible with our driver. So I guess I'm trying to understand the question a little and deeper. So a lot of these Dali drivers are compatible with all our products that we have. Like for example, like I mentioned in the first slide, they're compatible with the DT6 compatible with the static white, the HE, the DTA is compatible with the RGB, RGBW, and also the DT6 is compatible with the warm dim.
And your regional sales manager or account manager should be able to help you with that as well.
Okay.
Gerardo wants to know, are the DT6 and DT8 the same size?
Yes, they are. They are the exact same size. The only thing that changes is the decoder itself, the driver itself. So if you look at it inside here, this is basically what it looks like. This is I believe this is a DT6, and this is a DT8. I don't know if you could get the overview of it, Donna. They're pretty much exact same thing. The only thing that changed is all the guts inside the drivers. So they are the exact same size.
David is asking, you are working with Lutron to have the Athena AWN installed in the QTM?
Yeah, that's we're looking at for future applications. So just reach out to your regional, and I'm sure they'll send us some more information. But we are looking at integrating that in some of our QTMs in the future.
Shannon's explaining that the Dali equipment is made to work together, so there shouldn't be any compatibility issues. So he's suggesting that if people are concerned, they should test if using with somebody else's light engine. And that's actually the next question Gregor asked. Can I use your Dali DT6 and 8 with third-party fixtures?
Yeah, so typically, we always recommend testing it before actually putting it into the application because we don't know what they have, if they have any on-chip boards or something that might be interfering with the DT6 or DT8. But in typically it should work, but we always recommend to test it, or you could give us a call and maybe we could test it for you depending on what the application is.
Yeah, since Dali is
And
open protocol, there's a lot of interoperability and compatibility between the Dali systems with other people's fixtures and our drivers,
Correct.
but we would always recommend that you get a sample and test.
Mm.
and keep in mind that our units are all 24-volt DC, and the units that we have on the table right now are the QTM indoor units. We also have the QOM outdoor units available in DT6 and DT8.
Gian in the chat also gave some clarity on the Lutron. He said, we are working with Lutron to include the Athena node, and he believes we'll have 3 separate nodes on one QTM enclosure. David's asking a question. Your Dali power supplies are going to be D4I certified?
So
Part 250 and 150?
so we are looking at that for future applications. More information to come in the future. Right now we're just investigating to see what we could do inside of our enclosure. So we are looking at that.
And that would be to power the bus, correct?
Correct.
Matali?
Yes, to power the bus. Yep. Because again, our enclosures don't include that power supply. It's power supply by others.
David's asking another question. Can you make a bigger size like a QTL?
So right now the max is 300 watts. We would have to look at, I think that's all we could fit into this enclosure. We could do some specials if they need it, but we just have to look at it. I mean, depending on how many you need, if you need 600 watts, so it's a different power supply than our QTL. So it's not like you could put multiple fixtures in here because you have to actually power the decoder, so that takes up the space. But I'm sure, depending on the application, we would have to investigate to see how many we could put in a bigger, larger box. So as of right now, we don't have anything that's bigger than this. But I'm sure, if the application came in and depending on what you're looking for, we might be able to fix it into the box. So
Yeah.
another great question.
Matali, just like you said, I mean, today 300 watts is our maximum listed device.
Yeah.
It is definitely something that I think the team and some other of our customers have asked for in the past, and is being investigated.
Yeah, so we do get that call all the time, even with our current boxes. So I'm sure that engineering is working behind the scenes to try to see if they could incorporate a bigger box. Cool. Well, any more questions? All right, guys. Again, thanks you for the great questions, and we'll see you guys.
Thank you very much.